guessing it's pretty small. Okay. We have "It Looks Squishy" from Mallory. Yep, Brayden, go ahead.
It's not a picture of a crab. I don't say crab. I just say jellyfish.
Can you repeat that? I wasn't able, it was kind of echoey. I could not understand what you said.
There wasn't a picture of a crab. It's just a jellyfish.
You see a picture of a jellyfish? Is that what you said? Up on your PowerPoint screen, you see a picture of a jellyfish. But on the whiteboard, which is the bottom screen, you should see a picture of a crab. Do you see that? No. All right, well, let's try this. Who does see? Here we go. Who sees 4? All right, go ahead and answer the question on the screen for me. Who sees 4 screens? One of them being a whiteboard with the crab. All right, Brayden and Mallory, I'm not sure why you're not. Can you two do me a favor and log out and then log back in? Maybe you beat me here, so maybe you're not seeing the same thing as us, but can you try that, to log out and then log back in? Okay, we're going to give them a second to do that while I'm taking attendance. You guys can go ahead and continue to make observations on the whiteboard. All right, perfect. Now they both see it. Wonderful. So here we have a crab. You guys have made some great observations about the organism up here. Today, we are going to go ahead and talk about organisms like this crab. Our topic for this week is going to be marine invertebrates. Now, we have spent the last 2 weeks talking about sharks and fish, which are marine vertebrates. But today, we are going to switch gears entirely, talk about marine invertebrates. A marine invertebrate is an animal that does not have a backbone. There are hundreds of thousands of examples of marine invertebrates. I saw you guys writing at the beginning of the class, before class actually started, Haley wrote about a jellyfish that she saw on vacation. A jellyfish is an example of an invertebrate. This crab is an example of an invertebrate. Okay, we are going to only get to talk about some of the invertebrates because there are just so many. One of the important things when we're talking about invertebrates, and in lots of areas of biology, is talking about symmetry. I want you guys to raise your hand if you have ever heard of the term symmetry before in science. You don't have to tell me what it means. I'm not going to pick on anybody. But just raise your hand if you have heard of the term symmetry. Okay, a couple of you. Perfect. We're going to start with symmetry. And hopefully by the end, I will be able to pick on you, and you will be able to give me not only examples, but definitions of what symmetry is. So let's flip over to our PowerPoint screen. And right now you should see something that says body symmetry of animals on a blue screen. There's three types of symmetry that we are going to talk about. The first is, in my opinion, the easiest to determine. It is bilateral symmetry. Bilateral symmetry means a single plane divides a body into two mirror images. So right up here on this slide, you see a picture of a crab. The crab is divided into two equal halves, a right half and a left half. It has one eye on the right half, one eye on the left half, one large claw on the right half, one large claw on the left half. It is exhibiting bilateral symmetry. It can be divided in one spot into two mirror images. Now over on the left-hand side, I have some examples of non-marine invertebrates that also exhibit bilateral symmetry. So go ahead and take a look at those four. You could take and divide those animals right down the middle and create an equal right and an equal left-hand side. The second type of symmetry is called radial symmetry. Radial symmetry means that the organism can be cut in half along many different planes that allows for nearly identical halves. If you look at the sea anemone on the right-hand side, each of those mirrors is supposed to be a plane. You can see that excuse me, that sea anemone can be divided into lots of equal halves. You can divide it straight up and down. You can divide it right and left. You can divide it at 45-degree angles. And you're going to get equal halves. That is called radial symmetry. And the third type of symmetry is asymmetry. Asymmetry means that the organism cannot be divided into mirror images. This is a picture of a sponge on the left-hand side here, a sea sponge. There is no way that this sponge can be divided in equal right and equal left-hand half. So, let's take a look at what type of symmetry each of the following exhibit. So, I'm going to send a poll to you guys, and I would like you to answer what type of symmetry does this organism show? This organism is a moth. Is it exhibiting bilateral symmetry, which means an equal right and left-hand side? Is it showing asymmetry, which means it can be divided lots of different places to have two equal sides? Or is it exhibiting asymmetry, which means it cannot be divided into two separate halves? Awesome, you guys. Every single one of you got that correct. That is fantastic. Let's take a look at one that's a little bit harder. Here we have a sponge. Is this sponge exhibiting bilateral symmetry, asymmetry, or radial symmetry? Okay, I'm waiting for one more response. Go ahead and make your best guess. Remember, we are working through these first ones together. Do not worry. All right, we have asymmetry. Good job. Here we have our next slide. This slide is a picture of an elephant. And I know this is not a marine invertebrate by any means, but what type of symmetry is this elephant showing us? Okay, this one seems to be stumping some of you. I'm waiting for one more response. Okay, this elephant is showing us bilateral symmetry. You could take and you could cut it down the middle, and you would have an equal right and left-hand side. Let's take a look at this picture. This is not a picture of an animal by any means. It is a design. What is this design showing us? Bilateral symmetry means you can only cut it in one spot and have two separate halves. Radial symmetry means you could cut it in lots of different places to have two halves. And asymmetry means that you cannot cut it in half to have two equal halves. Awesome. Every single one of you got that one correct. The correct answer is radial symmetry. Now here we have a picture of a dog. Now it is a bizarre picture of a dog. Is it showing us bilateral symmetry, asymmetry, or radial symmetry? Very nice. Each and every one of you got that one correct. It is bilateral symmetry. Very nicely done. Okay, now here is a picture of a flower. Is this flower showing us bilateral symmetry, radial symmetry, or asymmetry? This flower is showing us bilateral symmetry. If you look at the flower and you divide it straight up and down, right along the middle, you will get two equal halves, a right-hand side and a left-hand side. I believe it is a type of iris, but I am not sure. Take a look at these. Think about this before you answer it. Is this asymmetry, bilateral symmetry, Great job. Okay, so everyone seems to have a good handle on bilateral symmetry versus asymmetry versus radial symmetry. Now we are going to go ahead and look at some marine invertebrates. There are over 31 phyla of animals that are considered invertebrates. Most have some sort of marine members. However, due to time, we are only going to talk about a few of the major phyla today in class. And I'm going to be skipping through a few of these. So the first thing I want to do is just introduce you to the names of the major invertebrate phyla. Now, some of them are hard to pronounce. The first is Porifera. Porifera means hole bearers. Examples of Porifera would be sponges. There are Cnidaria, which are stinging nettles, like sea anemones, hydroids, corals, and jellyfish. There are Mollusca, which are soft-bodied invertebrates, like snails, sea slugs, bivalves, cephalopods, and chitons. There are Annelida, which are segmented worms. There are Arthropoda, which means jointed limbs, like the crab we saw in the beginning, or shrimp, or urchins, or sand dollars. Oops, I'm sorry. Crabs, shrimp, amphipods, isopods, or barnacles. That didn't seem right as I was talking there. We have Echinodermata, which means spiny-skinned, like sea stars, sea urchins, sand dollars, or sea cucumbers. And we have Urochordata, which means tailed chordates, like sea squirts and larvas. Let's take a look at our first phyla, which is Porifera. Do I have a volunteer of anyone who would like to read this slide for me? Go right ahead. Oh boy, Brayden, you're first. Go right ahead.
Similar multi-celled animals, no organ systems, individual cells working to make a multi-celled animal, both are feeders on plankton, also bacteria. Specialized cells pump water through water and body. Skeletons can be fibrous and or contain cellulose or calcareous spicules. About 50 species and creatures have often produce toxins or depend against predation.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Brayden. It seems like Porifera are a very simple organism because they are. If you've ever been walking along on the beach and seen a sea sponge wash up, and you pick it up, you notice that there's really not much to them. It really is just like a sponge in your kitchen sink. There's holes, there's fibrous material, but there's nothing else to the organism. Now the next group, phyla, are Cnidaria. Victoria, would you like to go ahead and read this one for us?
It's simple but with organ systems. It is radial symmetry. Mouth and their anus combined. Blind gut. 2 cell layers with mesogal, which is jelly, between. Stinging tentacles or other specialized cells for capture of food. Surround toothless mouth. Some have complex life cycles with attached and free swimming stages.
Very good. Thank you very much, Victoria. Here are a picture of 2 Cnidarias. We have a sea anemone at the top and a jellyfish on the bottom. If you look at either of them, the jellyfish or the anemone, you see the stinging tentacles. On the jellyfish, they're hanging down. On the anemone, they're facing up. Either way, those are the stinging tentacles that are used to help collect food. So let's take a look at some of these stinging tentacles and how they actually work. If you've ever been stung by a jellyfish before, you know that it hurts, and it's not something that you would like to happen again. But this is what actually happens. We're going to start by looking over on the left-hand side, up at the top. You have the tentacles coming off either the anemone or the jellyfish. And then, if you move a little bit to the right, it has a zoomed-in picture where you see little hooks or barbs. That's what's on the end of the tentacles. Those little hooks are a trigger. Behind the trigger is a coiled up thread, sort of like a spring. The spring that might be in your pen, and when you push on it, it compresses it. And when that compression gets let go, it shoots out like a slinky. It can shoot out to the side. That trigger shoots out from the anemone or the jellyfish, and it discharges a stinging toxin into its prey. Now, most jellyfish do not bother you. It might hurt, it might itch, it might sting, but it's not going to kill you. But their toxin is strong enough to either kill or at least paralyze a fish that they may be trying to eat. Let's take a look at these sea anemones. If you look at the sea anemones, all around the outside, the outer edge, those are all the stinging tentacles. It's the same thing as a jellyfish, but theirs are facing up. Now here we have a few more cnidarians. On the left-hand side, you can see a sea anemone that has stung or paralyzed a fish. And on the right-hand side, this gives you a good idea of what a sea anemone looks like from above. Now, sea anemones, look at that for a second and think about what type of symmetry. I'll answer your question in 1 minute, Eric. What type of symmetry does this sea anemone on the right-hand side have? Go ahead and take a look. What type of symmetry? And go ahead and answer the poll for me. This has radial symmetry. There's lots of different places where a sea anemone can be divided, and you end up with two equal halves. Now, there were a couple of questions that just came up that I want to address before we go on. The first one was, I think, from Eric, and maybe it wasn't. Oh, yeah. If you get stung by multiple ones at the same time, could you get paralyzed? Now, there are certain jellyfish that could harm human. Man-o-war is one of them. I'm sure there are others, but I'm not in particularly familiar with them. But they can paralyze you or more like cause you to stop breathing. However, if you get stung by like a lion's mane jellyfish, which is most often what's seen along the coast of the U.S., you are not going to become paralyzed. Victoria just wrote box jellyfish. The other question that came up was a question about how do clownfish live within the tentacles of sea anemones. Does anyone know the answer to that one? Mallory, go ahead. Oh, I wasn't able to hear you talking. Make sure you hold your button down. Go ahead and try again, Mallory. I don't think your microphone's working, Mallory. Does anyone else have an answer to the question? All right, well, sea anemones are able to live, clownfish are able to live in the tentacles of sea anemones because they are immune to the sting of a sea anemone. The sea anemone and the clownfish work together. The sea anemone from a little baby fish builds up an immunity to, the clownfish as a little baby fish builds up an immunity to the stinging cells of the sea anemone. So what happens is the clownfish sits in the sea anemone and it draws in prey that the sea anemone will eat. The prey gets stung by the sea anemone. Right, they have sort of a slime or a mucus to protect it, exactly. They get stung by the sea anemone, and then the sea anemone can eat it. And the clownfish uses the sea anemone for protection because it is safe from predators there, because if a bigger, larger fish is coming to eat the clownfish, it gets stung by the sea anemone, and it dies. So they work together to live and survive. Okay, another cnidarian are corals. Here's a picture of a couple of different corals. There are tons and tons of different corals. We're going to talk more about corals in a later class when we talk about coral reefs. But here are a few sample pictures. This is a jellyfish that is most often seen off the coast of the U.S. It is a lion mane jellyfish. This lion mane jellyfish looks rather large. However, it isn't that large. It is probably a foot or two in diameter. They can get to be up to 8 feet in diameter, which is like 1.5 adults. So they can be huge. And they have the same thing. They have the stinging tentacles hanging off of the back. Yes, Eric, they are very often washed up along beaches. The next group is mollusca. Would anyone like to, who hasn't already, read about mollusca? Haley, go right ahead.
Soft body, often with shells. Single foot, often used for locomotion. Radula, present in all groups but bivalves. Second largest group of invertebrates. One-way gut.
All right, fantastic. Mollusca are something that you guys are probably pretty familiar with if you like to eat seafood. Scallops, mussels, oysters, clams, those are all examples of mollusca. Some molluscas that you may not be all that familiar with would be an octopus. An octopus is a mollusca. The octopus has a special thing in its mouth called a radula. Now, when this was being read, you might have thought, I have no idea what a radula is. A radula is almost like a beak inside the mouth of a mollusca that it uses to scrape food. Most mollusca have radulas except for bivalves. So what is a bivalve? Well, let's take a look at some different types of mollusca. The first type of mollusca has no shells. These are called nudibranchs. Here are some pictures of nudibranchs. They can be all different shapes, sizes. The one thing they have in common is that they have no hard shell to protect them. The next type of mollusca is a one-shelled limpet. Eric, most of them actually are like 6 inches, so you certainly can see them. However, they're probably not something that gets washed up on the beach often that you would see walking around. But if you were studying them, you certainly would be able to find them. The next type of mollusca is a mollusca that has one shell. A mollusca that has one shell would be a snail or a limpet. Now, if you look at the top left here, that's a picture of a limpet with barnacles on it. The pink one is as well. The top right, I don't know how that picture snuck on this slide. It should not be there. The larger picture here is a picture of a moon snail. If you've ever been walking around the beach and seen sort of a rubbery skin almost, like what's in the picture here, that is from a moon snail. And then the bottom two pictures are different types of whelks. Yes, Mallory, an octopus, a squid, a cuttlefish, and a nautilus. Those are all examples of cephalopods. The next type of mollusca is a chitin. They're 8-shelled mollusca. If you look at the bottom left-hand picture on this screen, you can see a good example of an 8-shelled mollusca. It has 8 individual shells, and when you flip them over, you see an organism like the one in the top right. It's a soft-bodied organism underneath the shell. Now, bivalves are probably what you think of most. Think of a mollusca. Bivalves have 2 shells, a scallop, a mussel, a clam, an oyster. Those are all examples of bivalves. Okay, I'm going to just flip ahead here a little. Here we go. Arthropoda. Would anyone like to, who has not already, read this slide? If you've already read, please don't volunteer. Mallory, let's see if your mic works. Go ahead and give it a try. Make sure you hit the talk button, Mallory.
Jointed appendages, exoskeleton, complex organ and sensory system, largest animal phylum, molting during growth, eggs cared for by females, planktonic larvae, bilateral symmetry.
Great job. Thank you very much. Here are some examples of arthropoda. We have 2 crabs. Now, one of the things that Mallory just read said something about a molt. You may or may not know what a molt is, but you probably have seen a molt if you've ever been to the beach. If you've ever seen a crab shell and flipped it over but realized there was no live crab inside of it, what you had was the molt of a crab. The molt of a crab happens because as crabs grow larger, they need a larger exoskeleton. Their exoskeleton is hard and does not grow like your skeleton inside of you grows. So they need to make a new exoskeleton. So what happens is the crab pushes the old shell off of its back, and you have what's in the top here, which is a molt. It's the same shape as a crab. It's the same color as the crab. There just is no crab in it. It's just its exoskeleton. Then the crab puffs itself up, and it forms a new exoskeleton that is hardened so that the crab can now grow. So here you have a picture of a live crab with its molt above it, and you can see and compare the size differences. Now, if you've ever looked at a crab, a female crab, and picked it up and seen little green or orange or red or black circles underneath her stomach, you are looking at the eggs of the crab. Here's a picture of a bunch of crab eggs. Yep, go ahead, Mallory.
How much eggs can a crab have?
You know what? I'm not sure. It probably depends on the crab species, but that's a great question. I will look it up and I will get an answer for next week. I am not sure. Let me write that down. Okay. Now, if we go ahead and look at a couple of other examples of arthropoda, we can see some other crabs. The names of these crabs is not all that important. I just want to show you that crabs and arthropoda in general can take various forms. They can have long, skinny legs and long, skinny pincher claws. They can have big, broad, fat, crushing claws. They can be hermit crabs, like in the top left of this screen, with a crab that carries around a shell. They also could be like the spider crab at the bottom right of this slide. This spider crab is decorating his shell with seaweed, barnacles, algae, so it camouflages in very well with its surroundings. And here are some other examples of arthropoda. We have some shrimp. We have some barnacles. The bottom three pictures on this slide are of barnacles. If you look at the one in the middle, you can kind of see the little feathers coming up. And those are actually the hairs from a barnacle. Who in this class, raise your hand, has ever heard of something called either a taxonomic or a dichotomous key? Again, I'm not going to put you on the spot to explain it, but raise your hand if you've ever heard of either a taxonomic or dichotomous key. All right, well, we are going to take a look at what in the world I'm talking about. So go ahead and go back to your whiteboard for me. A dichotomous key is basically a series of yes or no questions that you answer to determine what an organism is. So give me a second while I am writing a dichotomous key in this square. I would like you guys to make some observations about this animal on the rest of the whiteboard.
The talk button is on my screen. Is on.
Okay, there you go. It should be off now. Okay, you guys made some good observations about the animal. Does it sing or protect itself? Okay, those are some good questions. We are going to now, I'm going to lock your whiteboards here. We are going to now use a dichotomous key to try to determine what this animal is. Scientists, marine biologists, botanists, all different types of scientists use dichotomous keys all the time to either determine what type of organism they're looking at or to just verify it so they know for sure they are looking at this type of animal. When you are doing a dichotomous key, you answer questions either yes or no. There's only two choices. So for example, question number 1 here is this soft or hard? We are only looking at a picture, so this is a little hard for us to tell. But I'm going to tell you that it is a soft-bodied animal. So our answer is soft. So right here it says soft, go to 2. So we are going to go to question number 2 down here. It is asking, is this animal show asymmetry or bisymmetry? Go ahead and write it. Answer this poll. Does this animal show asymmetry or bisymmetry? What do you think? We're on question number 2. Is this animal showing asymmetry or bisymmetry? Bisymmetry means it can be divided into 2 equal halves. Asymmetry means it cannot be divided into 2 equal halves. So which is the better fit, asymmetry or bisymmetry? Okay, I'm just waiting for one more. The correct answer is bisymmetry. This animal does appear that it can be divided into 2 equal halves, which is bisymmetry. So then it says go to question 5. So we skip question 3, we skip question 4, and we go to question 5. Now question 5 says, does it have a straight stem? Does this appear to have a straight stem? I would say yes. So it says yes, this is an anemone. So for this dichotomous key, our answer is this organism is an anemone. And that is how you use a dichotomous key. Your homework this week is to use a dichotomous key to determine different types of animals. Okay, you don't have to answer all of the questions in a dichotomous key. For example, if we had said this was a hard animal, you would go right to question number 3. You would totally have skipped over question number 2. Okay. What we're going to do, since we have a couple of minutes left, we moved a little bit quicker, we are going to go ahead and look at a PowerPoint about jellyfish. Someone had said earlier in class that they really like jellyfish. I apologize, I don't remember who it was. Oh, Victoria maybe? Fish, no bones, no brains, but what a sting. So let's take a look at some jellyfish. Here are some facts on jellyfish. Now this first fact, you already know, if you were paying attention earlier. The first fact about jellyfish is that it belongs to the phyla Cnidaria. Jellyfish, for the most part, have radial symmetry. They have a medusa shape. They fertilize their eggs externally, meaning that their sperm and eggs are released in the water. They have 2 layers. They have an outer layer called an epidermis and an inner layer called a gastrodermis. In between those 2 layers is a mesoglia. It's sort of like a jelly almost between the 2 layers. And they have stinging cells called cnidocytes. Now, where do jellyfish live? Would anyone like to read this one? Go ahead, Lizzie. I don't think you've had a chance today. Make sure you click on the talk button on your screen, Lizzie. All right, Brayden, it doesn't sound like Lizzie's is working. Would you like to read it for us?
Jellyfish are found in every ocean. They live in both deep and shallow coastal waters.
Very good. Mallory, would you like to read the feeding screen?
Jellyfish eat tiny plankton, invertebrates, larvae, and small fish. Jellyfish have sensors in their tentacles that can detect movement around them. When movement is detected, stingers shoot out and paralyze the prey. The jellyfish then uses its tentacles to bring the prey to its mouth and ingest it.
Great. Thank you very much. Movement. Haley, would you like to read about movement for us?
Jellyfish usually drift or move gracefully through the ocean. Occasionally, you will see them swimming. Jellyfish swim by pulsations of their umbrella or bell shape. It is coordinated by a very simple nervous system.
Thank you. Appearance. Any volunteers to read appearance? Haley, go ahead.
Jellyfish often appear clear or pale blue color. They can also be yellow, deep blue, bright purple, pale lilac, bright orange, and deep red. When they are disturbed at night, they give off a cold, bright light called luminescence.
Very good. Thank you very much. And there's just two different jellyfish. The top one is an orangey reddy color, and the bottom one is a bioluminescing jellyfish. Okay, Victoria, would you like to read more facts?
Yes, but also I wanted to say in the last picture, the orangey red one looked like a Pacific sea nettle. And also here's the more facts. They're made up of 95% water, more than 200 species of jellyfish. Jellyfish have a short lifespan, and the longest surviving species live only from 2 to 6 months. Ocean sunfishes and leatherback sea turtles are two predators of the jellyfish.
Very good. And now this is a picture of the life cycle of a typical jellyfish. They start as an egg over on the left-hand side. Then they move to a free-floating planula. The planula then plants itself on something, whether it's a rock or coral. Then it generally has a polyp, which forms buds, which then release the buds into an immature medusa and then the adult medusa. Now, not all jellyfish follow the same life cycle. It's a general life cycle, though. Okay, so your homework this week, just to recap real quick, is going to be to check out a dichotomous key and attempt to use it. It is not up in Moodle yet. It will be up there shortly. I did not want anyone to try and work on it early. So it will be there shortly. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email during the week. I hope you guys all have a great day.